The security guard twisted his arm so hard his knuckles scraped marble. "Stop," the woman in the white suit said. "Don't break him." The guard hesitated. Guests turned. Champagne flutes paused mid-air. A string quartet kept playing like no one told them. "He took the envelope," another guard said. 40,000, cash. "He fixed my engine this morning," the woman said without looking away from him. "Now I want to know if he steals." The mechanic's name was Jonah. Grease stained the cuff of his denim shirt. He kept breathing evenly. He didn't fight. He looked past the guard, past the eyes and diamonds, toward the sliding doors and the moonlit dock outside. "The Starling's starboard bilge pump is sucking small metal," he said, voice tight. "You lost a cufflink at sea. It's in the basket. Stop accusing me and pull the basket." The room murmured. The woman's eyes didn't blink. She nodded once at her head of security. "Go," she said. A guard jogged out. Shoes clicked. The quartet hit a wrong note and corrected. Jonah kept his hands open so they could see he wasn't going anywhere. If he was wrong, he was done. The boat's name glowed in gold outside the glass. Starling. The kind of yacht the harbor called a house, not a boat. The guard burst back in 3 minutes later, breathless, palm up. A green cufflink sat there, slick with seawater and bits of hair and lint. Gasps. Phones lifted. The woman stepped closer. The cufflink reflected emerald in her eyes. "Then where," she said, soft but sharp, "is my envelope from last night?" Jonah's jaw clenched. He stared at the cufflink. He wished the violinist would stop. "Harbor office," he said. "I turned it in before 10, ask Klein." She tilted her head. A guard peeled off to make the call. She watched his face the way divers watch a gauge, calculating the moment you run out of air. He met her eyes but didn't look for mercy. He wasn't begging in a room like this. He knew exactly what it thought of men in grease-stained shirts. The guard on the phone hung up. He leaned to the woman's ear. She said nothing for a beat, then let him go. The guard released Jonah's arm. His skin was raw where marble had kissed it. Her voice lifted for the room. Calm, contained. "Misunderstanding," she said. "Enjoy the evening." The quartet swelled like it had been waiting. She turned and walked toward the dock doors. She didn't look back to see if he followed. He did. Outside, the air smelled like salt and varnish. The Starling rocked gently. Lights traced her lines. "I told Klein to lock that envelope," Jonah said, voice low. "He did. He says he did," she said. "He also says he gave it to your assistant this morning." Jonah's spine went cold. "I don't have an assistant. He says his name was Dylan. He said Dylan works with you." Jonah looked past her to the dark public dock where his van sat. He pictured a kid in a faded baseball cap with hands too fast for his brain. He pictured the lift he couldn't afford to fix, the landlord with the red notice, the text from his mother's pharmacy asking for a card on file. "Bring him," she said. "Now." Jonah didn't move. "Please," she added. It wasn't a switch of tone. It was a test spoken politely. He nodded once. He pulled his phone. 2 hours earlier, the storm had snapped through like a thrown sheet. The docks had gone quiet after. Enclosing his toolbox when the skiff slid sideways into the pilings like a beer can against a curb. "Hey," Jonah had called, dropping the rag. "Neutral, neutral." "I can't." A voice fired back from under a dripping black hoodie. He jumped down. The skiff slammed his shin. Pain shot up his leg. He still grabbed the bowline, looped, pulled. The skiff banged once more, then caught against the tires he'd hung as bumpers. "Kill the fuel," he said, fingers already pulling the cowling off the little outboard. "Pull choke, don't flood it." Water streaked off her cap. Her face was shadowed, sharp angles gone soft with rain. She smelled like wet rope and coffee. "It died by the seawall," she said through teeth. "Half the bay tried to swallow me." "It'll swallow you again if you go back out with this," he said, holding up the impeller. It was chewed to plastic confetti. "Is that bad? It's your water pump. You've been running dry. This engine should be cooked." He peered at the head. "You got lucky." She hugged herself and blew air out, shaky. "Lucky's not usually my thing." He walked around the corner to his shelf and grabbed the last Johnson 9.9 impeller he kept for the old-timers who refused to upgrade. $70 he didn't have time to replace. He dropped to one knee, hands moving automatic. Screws, gasket, impeller, housing, tight, grease, cable. He glanced up. "You sure you want to take this skiff back out tonight?" he asked. Hull S got patches, winds shifting. "Ferry wakes'll throw you like a soda cup." She set her jaw. "I got things to do." He looked at the boat with duct tape ghosts and zip ties. He looked at the woman with a cheap ring on one finger and eyes that didn't look cheap at all. 50 for the impeller, he said. "Labor on the house." Her head snapped. "No, it's a 5-minute job. You bled for it," she said, flicking her eyes to his shin. "Charge me." He popped the lower unit back in, screwed it tight, wiped his hands, and set the old impeller in his pocket because he kept parts like a squirrel kept nuts. 200 then, he said. "Still a deal." She dug in her backpack. "Card okay?" He tapped the sign. "Cash only," she exhaled. "There's an ATM by the lighthouse." "Yeah." She left the bag on the bench and jogged into the rain. He pulled a plug to look at the color. He wiped the floor. He paused. He had never been one to snoop. He told himself he was moving the bag so it wouldn't get stolen. He lifted it to the top shelf near the fluorescent. The zipper gaped just enough that cash flashed like teeth. He put the bag on the highest shelf and pushed it back until it kissed the wall. She came back wet and shivering, hoodie clinging, and thrust an envelope at him. He He counted quickly, mind doing math while hands did show. 200. He tried to hand back a 20 because he'd miscounted and she didn't notice. He tucked it into the register tin, slid out a receipt he tried to keep for the tax man even though the tax man didn't care about men with tin receipts. Keep it, she said, nodding at the 20 he still had in his hand. I don't want your tip, he said, just don't drown. Her mouth did a thing that might have been a smile, might have been a dare. She shoved the envelope deeper into her backpack, zipped, then looked him in the face like she hadn't looked him in the face before. What's your name? She asked. Jonah K., she said. Thank you, Jonah. She took the tiller, eased the skiff out, and disappeared into the slip darkness. He cleaned the bench, he swept, he locked the tin. When he moved the backpack to hand it to her if she came back for it, something thumped the floor. Another envelope, fatter, unsealed. His gut tightened. He didn't open it. He didn't need to guess amounts. He could feel weight. He slid it into a Ziploc bag and wrote "found in skiff" on it with a Sharpie. He put the bag in the locked glove box of his van behind the old flares, because Harbor Master Klein opened at 7 and Klein loved paperwork more than anyone Jonah knew. He went home to his place over the bait shop. He microwaved noodles. He heated a damp towel in the toaster because the dryer was broken. He slept on the couch because his bed squeaked and the neighbors had opinions. He woke before dawn. He drove to Klein S with the big coffee that always cost 50 cents more than he thought it should and the envelope in his jacket. Klein squinted over his glasses. What kind of idiot leaves this on a skiff? He muttered, counting quick. He didn't say the number out loud. He slid it into a safe and wrote a slip. He made a show of stamping the slip so big it could be seen from space. Finder S, Klein said, sliding a carbon copy across. If no one claims in 90 days. Don't start, Jonah said. He gave Klein the look that said if Klein joked about finders keepers again, Jonah would rewire his porch light to blink all night. As he walked out, Pierce Dalton leaned against the doorway like a magazine ad that drank too much scotch. You're up early, Pierce said, smile too wide. His teeth cost more than Jonah's van. Work, Jonah said, sidestepping. Pierce's marina serviced the yacht club end, meaning he printed money and called it labor. Heard you pulled a little charity case out of the bay last night, Pierce said. Girl in a hoodie, cute, wild, that your thing now, rescuing strays, makes for good stories. You know what makes for better stories? Invoices. Jonah didn't slow. I've got more work than I can take, Pierce called. Refits, full repowers, boats that drink cash. You want in, stop playing altar boy. Stop telling rich people they don't need what they think they need. They'll pay if you scare them right. Jonah stopped. He turned. Your thermostat recall on the Mercer fleet last year, he said, voice even. You charged triple for rubber and called it a system overhaul. Pierce's smile thinned. Careful. Stop talking to me, Jonah said. He walked away. His phone buzzed an hour later. Unknown number. He almost didn't pick up. The van needed a new alternator. The roof of the shop leaked. Picking up led to bills. He picked up. Is this Jonah Ray's? A man's voice asked. Smooth. This is Shaw Security for Mercer Marina. We have a vessel requiring immediate service. The Starling. The owner requests you specifically. He blinked through the windshield at a gull riding wind. He hadn't told anyone he'd swapped an impeller in the dark last night. How'd you get my number? Harbor Master Klein recommended you, the voice said. Can you come now? He glanced at his schedule. 3 oil changes. 1 no start on an old trawler. A loyalty discount he couldn't afford to give but always did. Yes, he said. When he rolled through the gates, security watched his van like it was a stray dog. The Starling gleamed under a morning that pretended last night's storm didn't exist. A woman in a white suit stood against the rail like she owned the tide. She did. Jonah, she said, voice clean, vowels cut with private school. Thank you for coming. He didn't recognize her, not like this. Same eyes, different world. What's the issue? He asked. The engine won't start, she said. My last tech said it's the ECU. Replace the whole unit. Expensive diagnosis, he said. It's what he said. Let me check, he said. He stepped into her world without touching anything. He scanned the bilge. Dry, he popped the cover. Batteries at 12.6. Grounds corroded under shrink wrap. He scratched with his nail, made a face, and cut. He peeled back and found green like seaweed. He cleaned. He tightened. He tried the start. The engine coughed and caught. He watched the owner's face when the sound rolled through the hull. Well, that was easy, she said. She sounded almost disappointed. Easy is nice, he said, and straightened. She signaled to an assistant. The assistant pressed an envelope toward him as if handing a menu at a dinner he would never be invited to. Your invoice plus a gratuity, she said. He glanced. Thick. Invoice only, he said. Take it, she said. Not a request, a habit. No, he said, and tapped his clipboard. 9 for the trip, 50 for the hour, 12 for supplies, call it 71. She looked at him like she was trying to find the trick. When she didn't see it, something in her posture shifted a hair. What do you charge for honesty? She asked. Daily rate, he said. Same as labor. He didn't smile. He didn't make a joke. He didn't flinch when she held the envelope out a second longer and then dropped it to the table. Her assistant's fingers scooped it away like a magician's. Shaw, she said, and her head of security appeared from shade. Give Mr. Ray's a tour. Show him the bilge pumps. He speaks pump. Shaw nodded toward the companionway. It was when they were under, crouched between polished systems that didn't know what rust was, that Shaw said the thing that pulled them to the marble floor later that night. Do you know a Dylan? He asked, casual like weather. Yeah, Jonah said. Kid S been helping mornings, wants to learn, should be in school. Klein lets him sit on the ice machine when no one's looking. Shaw grunted. Klein said he picked up an envelope for you. Jonah's knuckles went white around a hose clamp. He doesn't work for me, Jonah said. Does he have access to your van? He keeps the sockets in order, argues about Spotify. Shaw nodded. Understood. They found the corroded ground under the starboard battery too. He showed Shaw how green hides under heat shrink. He explained why cheap labor gets expensive on the water. Shaw listened like he heard the words, but also heard everything between them. When they came back topside, the woman had vanished back into her day of meetings and men with watches. That night at the gala, they grabbed Jonah as he stepped out of the restroom near the ballroom. Shaw didn't grab him. The other guard did. Guests smelled accusation before they saw it. The cufflink in the pump basket saved his arm first. The phone call to Klein to confirm Jonah's claim about the envelope saved his name for 50 heartbeats. Then Klein said Dylan, said picked up. Said he signed for it like he did lots of things with sloppy signatures that looked legal in the dark. Which is why, when she told him to bring Dylan, Jonah called the number he'd pulled out of the kid when he'd said, "You can't get paid if you refuse tips." And the kid had shrugged and said something about a mom who only answered unknowns. Dylan showed up in a hoodie that could have been the same as the woman, S from last night if it wasn't 3 sizes bigger and hanging off bones. He shoved his hands deep in the pocket like he could hide inside the pocket if he had to. You took the envelope from Klein, Jonah said. No hello, Dylan's mouth opened, closed. He said you told him, he said to give it to me. Klein never said that, Jonah said. Not a shout, quiet like motors are at idle before the throttle shoves them forward. Why did you take it? Dylan looked at the marble. My brother's car got repoed. He's got my niece. He can't get to the plant. They'll fire him. He told me he'd pay me back Friday when he got the check. He swore. I didn't know where else to. Shaw took one short breath. The woman standing a step behind him wore the same expression she'd worn when the engine turned over. That measuring look, that gauge. Do you have the money? Shaw asked the kid. No, Dylan whispered. So it's gone. The kid nodded once. His chin trembled and then locked. Jonah stared at him. He wasn't seeing Dylan. He was seeing the notice that said pay the rent by Monday or the locks change. He was seeing a pharmacy printout. He was seeing his father's hands when the nets cut them in winter. The envelope wasn't mine, the woman said. It was a test. Dylan flinched like a dog that learns to flinch. You stole from a test, she said. Not cruel, just surgical. Dylan's eyes flew to Jonah, begging. The way kids do when they want the adult to pull a coin from behind someone's ear and make all of it turn into a trick. Jonah didn't look away from the kid. You go to Klein in the morning, he said. You tell him exactly what you did. You sign whatever he wants. You work for me every day you're not in school until it's paid back. You'll take cash envelopes from me to Klein yourself until then, without opening them, without blinking at them. Dylan swallowed. He'll call the cops. He might, Jonah said. Then you go with them. You tell the truth there too. I'll be there. And if he fires you, Dylan blurted. Then I fix engines in alleys, Jonah said. So do you. Shaw's face was unreadable. The woman S wasn't. Something in her eyes softened a measurement. I can't, Dylan started. You can, Jonah said. Why would you? Dylan tried again. Because you're 17 and an idiot, Jonah said. And because no one showed you how to be a different thing yet. That's on us. Dylan's mouth closed. This isn't finished, Shaw said. It wasn't a threat, it was a schedule. Not by a long shot, the woman said. Shaw didn't move. He was looking past them toward the doors they had just come through, where Pierce Dalton was shaking hands with a man whose watch probably had a name. Pierce saw Jonah and smiled like nothing was wrong in the world. The assistant from earlier leaned into the woman's ear and whispered. The woman's eyes cut to Jonah's van through the glass on the far side of the patio. Shaw's radio crackled. He listened. He didn't like what he heard. Bring the van, the woman said. Jonah didn't like what he heard either. Shaw opened the van doors like a surgeon opens a chest. Tools lined up, containers labeled in paint pen, a life of keeping order in places that didn't pay you to. There was a black velvet pouch tucked under a rag, a pouch that did not belong to men like Jonah. Shaw didn't touch it. He looked at Jonah. Jonah nodded once. Shaw lifted it with 2 fingers and opened it. Diamonds caught the string lights like fireworks. The assistant made a small, involuntary sound, the kind women make when they see something that costs more than the houses on Main Street. That, Pierce said lightly from over by the door, appearing with a perfectly timed laugh. Looks bad, Pierce, the woman said without looking at him. Go home. I'm a member, he said. Home is here. Shaw turned the pouch over. A tiny chain tangled with the stones. On the clasp, an engraving. Mercer M. The woman looked at Jonah again. Did you take that? No. Then how did it get here? He gave her the thing she hated most, a shrug. You have camera coverage across the members' lot? Jonah asked Shaw, eyes never leaving the woman. Shaw nodded. 2 hours before the gala, Jonah said. I was at the shop. There's a coffee receipt in my cup holder. Time stamps 5:22. If this was put in after that, it wasn't me. Shaw's radio hissed again. He handed it to the assistant and jogged off toward the guard station. The woman's gaze flicked once toward Pierce. He was still smiling. Men like him smiled like that because they didn't know how to do anything else with their faces in public. Shaw came back faster than the last time. He held a tablet. He showed the woman. He showed Jonah. The video was grainy. The angle was bad, but it was enough. Jonah's van sat in the lot. A man in a suit jacket walked casually past, left hand in pocket. He paused. He bent at the back. His right hand ducked in like a shadow. He moved on. He didn't look left or right, smooth, practiced. The time stamp, the woman asked. 5:31, Shaw said. Her face didn't change. Pierce's smile faltered for the first time. I came in at 6, he said. Then the man in the jacket who walks like you, whose cologne lingers like you, whose arm mole is visible in 480p like you, will be very surprised tomorrow when the police knock, she said. Shaw, yes, Ms. Mercer, Shaw said and spoke into his radio. Silence fell with weight. The string quartet stopped for real this time. Pierce tried to laugh. He tried to reach for a glass. He tried to find another face to look at that wasn't the woman S, but no one wanted to be that face. Ms. Mercer, he said. Lila, this is it's I'm sure if we discuss. Your invoices have been creative for years, she said. I hired a forensic accountant last fall. This is not a surprise to me. The only surprise is how sloppy tonight was. He swallowed. He turned. He looked at Jonah like Jonah had done this to him. Like men like Jonah do anything to men like Pierce except try not to get crushed by their boats. Security moved like tide around him. They didn't make a scene. They made a plan. Shaw turned back to Jonah. He did the thing Jonah didn't expect. He held out his hand. Sorry about your van, he said. Jonah didn't take the hand. He looked at the woman. You always stage traps at parties, he asked. Only when I'm bored, she said. You were last night's K, he said. She didn't pretend otherwise. That was a test too. Which one did I fail, he asked. You haven't yet, she said. Dylan stood 2 feet away, hands still in his pocket like he wasn't sure if he existed. You set up the envelope, Jonah said. On the skiff. Yes. Why? Because men like Pierce think honesty is a sales tactic, she said. I wanted to find someone who didn't think of it at all. He nodded once. It wasn't praise, it was information. Tomorrow morning, she said. 9 o'clock, my office. Bring Dylan, bring your invoices. I have a schedule, he said. Not anymore, she said. It wasn't arrogance. It was a fact she intended to write into his life. He almost told her no. He thought about the lift he couldn't fix. He thought about the kid who looked like a deer in headlights and thought he needed a brother's car to keep a job at a plant that would cut him loose anyway. Fine, he said. 9. She walked away without another word. The party resumed in a way that said the party had never stopped. People are good at pretending. At 9, Jonah stood in a room with windows that ate the city. Dylan's hoodie looked wrong against the glass. Shaw stood like a piece of furniture that knew how to fight. Lila Mercer stood by a table with a file open. She tapped a page. I've read everything Klein had on you, she said. Every ticket you paid on time, every permit, every complaint you filed when a charter tried to skip you. You do the work you say. You charge less than you should. I charge what's fair, he said. You're behind on your rent, she said. 2 months? He didn't nod. He didn't need to. You sleep above a bait shop, she said. You ask for honesty, he said. You hired a detective. It costs less than being lied to, she said. She turned to Dylan. You went to Klein? Dylan nodded. He yelled, he said, voice small. He said to pay it back in 30 days or he calls the police. He said to have Jonah stop by because he wants to see if it's true that he didn't send me. It's true, Jonah said. She looked between them. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Pierce will be arrested within a week. His contracts will implode. I will need someone to take over the work he abandoned on the small boats. Most people will chase the superyachts. I care about the charter captains and the old men with the Johnsons. They fish. They feed families. They vote me out if I ignore them. I don't care about your seat, Jonah said. Good, she said. Neither do I. She slid a folder across the table. Keys sat on top, a simple ring. A fob with a number. That is the lease to 14 Dock Street, she said. Pierce's old service bay on the public side. It's paid for 5 years. If you take it, you run it on paper with me. You hire who you want. You set the rates. The only non-negotiables are on the last page. He flipped the last page. It was simple. Service for a percentage, capped so he couldn't give away the shop out of guilt. Free labor hours donated monthly to community boats. Apprenticeships for at-risk youth, specifically ones like Dylan, with real training and real pay. A clause that said any parts markup over 20% required a reason in writing. That line made him smile because of how many times he'd seen it read as 40 and 70. Why me? He asked. She gestured at Dylan. You didn't throw him under the bus when it would have been easiest, she said. You didn't take my money when I made it easy. You fixed the thing that saved my boat instead of selling me panic. You looked at a bilge basket when everyone else looked at my security guards. You looked where the truth lived. Dylan wiped his nose with the back of his hand. He pretended not to. And if I say no? Jonah asked. You won't, she said. He breathed. He looked out at the water. He looked down at his hands. There was a line of grease he had missed that morning along one nail. He rubbed it with his thumb until it came off. 4 conditions, he said. Shaw's mouth twitched. Lila lifted one eyebrow. 4. 1, Jonah said. Dylan finishes school. Apprenticeship is part-time until then. He owes Klein. He pays him down. 2. I get to keep a cash drawer for captains who can't work a card reader without swearing. 3. I pick my own coffee maker because I'm not drinking whatever you people think is coffee. 4. You don't call me in the middle of the night unless someone is actually sinking. Shaw wrote something down. Probably nothing, maybe everything. Done, she said. He didn't take the keys yet. And you? He asked. Do you stop testing the people who work for you like rats? She didn't blink. No, she said, but I'll tell them when it's a test. That's my condition. Honesty goes both ways. He nodded. He took the keys. On the way out, Dylan walked like his shoes were too big. He kept looking at the fob like it might bite. You coming? Jonah asked. To where? To the shop, Jonah said. You're late. For what? To learn why impellers matter, Jonah said, and why bilge baskets keep secrets. Dylan cracked a smile. It made him look 10 years younger. They reopened Dock Street service a month later under a different sign. The letters were simple. Rays and Co. The Co mattered. People noticed. Captains who'd been ripping out their hair in parking lots and borrowing tools started bringing coolers and paying their bills without rolling their eyes. They liked that the receipt had no surprise fees. They liked that a kid in a too-big hoodie handed them copies and said, "We replaced the gasket. If you want to see the old one, it's right there in the bin." The day Pierce was let out of a hearing in a gray suit that suddenly looked too tight, Shaw sent a photo of a green cufflink sitting in a clear evidence bag. Jonah didn't respond. He had a hand in a bilge and a phone that always had grease on the screen anyway. Lila didn't stop by much. When she did, she came alone, without a suit, without a plan. He'd stand in the doorway and watch, not like a boss, like a woman who had learned that watching boats leave safely is a better use of time than pretending not to care when they don't. One night, months later, the wind hit like a slap. Fishermen came in late with nets heavy and back muscles ruined. An old man's outboard coughed and died 20 yards from the ramp. He yelled something like a prayer and something like a curse. Jonah and Dylan ran. They caught the bow. They saved the hands. They saved the fish. He hauled the boat up and turned the key and listened. Impeller, Dylan said. Shredded. Easy fix. He said it like he was pointing to truth everyone should know. He said it like it wasn't something you learned, like it was something you held. Lila stood in the shadow of the bait shop upstairs. She had a scarf tight around her neck. She didn't come down. She didn't need to. The streetlight threw their shadows long. The water made the sound that water makes when it knows people are paying attention to it. Invoice. Dylan asked, flipping his pad open. 71, Jonah said. Dylan grinned. Still undercharging. Daily rate, Jonah said. He watched the old man's hands shake less. He watched the boat roll gently like it was grateful. He went back inside. He wiped his hands. He moved to the window when the old man's truck pulled out. He checked the tide chart pinned to the corkboard. He took the keys from his pocket and set them on the counter for a second just to feel their weight. He didn't know it then, but that first night, when the cufflink came out of a dirty bilge basket and a room full of people learned how truth hides in small places, he looked like a man getting accused and refusing to fold. That was the point. He didn't fix rich people's lives. He fixed their boats. The difference mattered. He never pretended it didn't. On a Saturday when the sky was so clear it hurt, a kid from down the block came in and asked if there were jobs. Jonah pointed at a broom. The kid picked it up without smirking. Dylan nodded at him like he was passing a torch. Lila watched from the doorway and for the first time said nothing at all. No tests, no tasks, no trap. Just a woman in a city by the water, standing inside a place she helped build, watching a man who fixed what broke and chose every day to keep being that kind of person, even when his hands shook, even when a marble floor tried to grind his knuckles down. The next storm came, like they always do. The docks held anyway, and when a skiff slammed and a voice shouted in the rain, Jonah and Dylan moved like they'd been drilled. Neutral, Dylan yelled. Kill the fuel, Jonah said. And somewhere in a house with windows like eyes, a woman set down a pen and listened for engines turning over and boats not sinking and people who had learned to look in the basket before they blamed the man holding the wrench.